Hey, what's up everybody? I'd like to welcome you to another Juice tutorial. And today what we're going to do is part one of a little series that we're going to do on building a very basic audio file player. So it's going to basically be able to load an audio file and then be able to play it and stop it, bring it back to the beginning and play it again. So this is based on a tutorial on the Juice tutorials page on building an audio file player. And what we're going to do is break this down into a couple parts because there are a couple little concepts that we've never gone through in any of the other tutorials before. And I'm learning all of this stuff as you're learning it. And so trying to explain it to you will help me learn it a little bit better myself. So, and I think that you'll hopefully find it helpful as well. So we're going to just on this part work on actually building the open button, which means that we're going to build a button. It's going to say open. We're going to be able to click it. It's going to open up the window that's going to allow us to choose an audio file. Then we're going to be able to click on the audio file and choose it, and it'll load it up and get it ready to play. Okay, so we're just going to work on that functionality today because there's quite a bit of information to digest just to be able to do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to build an audio application today. We'll call this simple audio player and create. I'm just going to load that up in Xcode. As I said, this is based on a Juice tutorial on building an audio player, but we're just going to go ahead and take this bit by bit so we can go ahead and explain each individual part and go through some of the concepts behind it. So we're going to go into our CPP files here, and I'm going to go ahead and just hit Command T just so I can load up my header file on one side and the CPP on the other side. Okay, and then I'm just going to go ahead and just change some of these defaults here so we can make this maybe 200 by 100. We don't need any input channels, so we'll just set this to 0. I can get rid of some of this, some of these comments here because we don't need this stuff. Make everything nice and neat. Okay, cool. So first thing that we're going to do when we need to build a button that loads an audio file is we need to build a button. So we have a couple different, we have quite a few new classes here that we're going to use today. So the first one that we're going to use is called text button. So pretty self-explanatory. So it's just a button that has a bit of text in it, and we can click in it and it'll do events for us. Okay, so we can do text button and we'll just call this open button. Okay, then we'll just go ahead and initialize this. Okay, so I can use an initializer list. This is something we've gone through in past tutorials. Okay, because in here we can just say, okay, we're going to go ahead and initialize this constructor with a string name, and that's what we're going to name the button. Okay, so I can just say open button. Okay, and this is just the text that it's going to say inside. I could just say open. Okay, and down here we can add it as a child component of this main component, and we would just call it open button here. Okay, and down here at the bottom we'll just erase all this stuff and we'll just set some bounds for it. So we can just say open button dot set bounds, and we'll just put it at 10. We'll do get width minus 20, and height we'll put at we'll just put it at 30. Okay, so that'll just create a button for us. And so we're just going to go ahead and build that. While we're building that, we'll just go ahead and start on some other things here. Actually, we'll just wait for this to build real quick. Yeah, these always take a while to compile at first. So hopefully it'll go faster after this one initial build. Okay, and success, just waiting for it to load up. And there's our button that says open. Okay, and so it doesn't really do anything right now. Okay, we don't have any events tied to it, so that's what we're going to do first. We're going to actually make it so when this button actually gets clicked, it actually does something. Okay, so if we go back to our text button here and we scroll down a little bit, we can see that we have some member functions, and then we have some I think it's in here. Yeah. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to introduce a new concept. It's a concept that we haven't gone through in these tutorials called a Lambda function. Okay. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create an event that basically that is going to look out for when the user clicks the mouse. And when they click the mouse, we obviously want something to happen. Okay. What a Lambda does, a Lambda can basically be described as a function that we don't want to go through and create like a whole separate place for it, basically, because we're only going to call it once, and it's only going to be called when this button actually gets clicked. Okay, so this is kind of a shorthand way of saying, okay, what do we want to happen when when the user clicks the open button? Okay, so what we could do, sorry, I hit the wrong button there, is I can basically go here, just to go back real quick. So we have this function here. So this is a Lambda that we can call called OnClick. Okay, so this just means when the user clicks the button, what do we want to happen? Okay, so I can say open button OnClick, okay, equals. Okay, and you can see that the return type is actually a function. Okay, so it needs to return an actual function. And so what we could do, the function, the syntax of it is a little bit different. Okay, but it's quite easy to get used to. So basically, you have these two brackets looks kind of like array brackets, but it's not an array. It's capture. Basically, this captures an event. Okay, and what we could do is with the event that we want to capture when the button gets clicked. Okay, so on click, we want to capture this. We want to capture this event. Okay, then we basically do open and close brackets like we're doing a function, because that's exactly what it is. It's a function. Okay, but it's just a little small function that we can use rather than having to go and write a whole separate function that has its own name. Okay. And the only thing is that we don't have, we haven't written a function for it yet to define what happens when we click in this mouse. Okay, so what I can do is I'm just going to leave this blank for a moment, and I'm just going to put a semicolon there, because basically we're going to have some function here that's going to end in a semicolon. And then we put a semicolon at the end. Okay, so that's the only thing that's a little bit different from like a regular old function, is that we put one at the end there. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to create a function that we need called when the button gets clicked. Okay, so we can just call this. I'm just going to put this above text button here. So we'll call this void. Open button clicked. Okay, and this is where we're going to define what happens when the button gets clicked. So going back to our CPP, we can just now write this function really quick. Okay, so main component, open button clicked. I think that's a different function that's been deprecated in Juce, or something. I don't know why that's crossed out, but okay. Anyways, so what we can do is, for now, just to make sure that this functionality is working properly, what we can do is we can just do a console out. Okay, so normally we do a stdc out, But what we could do here is we can use another function that I found out recently about from I think Daniel in the group. He told me about this one called DBG, which is just the same thing as C out basically. So I can just put clicked. So basically what's going to happen is that when the open button gets clicked, it's just going to console out that clicked. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and build that real quick just to make sure that our button is actually functioning properly. So here it is. I can hit open. Oh, I forgot to do something. I forgot to actually put this in my Lambda function. So we just need to do this. Open button clicked. Okay, so this just means that when the button's clicked, it's just going to call this function. Okay, so let's try this again. And here we are. And now I can just do this, and you can see that it says click down there. Okay, so that's working all right. Okay, so that's all good. So now we need to define what we want to happen when this when our open button gets clicked. Okay, so the way that I like to do this, if I don't know what I need to do in here, is I like to kind of pseudocode it out here, and I think that that might be quite useful for this situation, because it can get kind of windy and a little bit kind of complicated if we don't actually kind of define what we're doing first. Okay, so basically what we need to do is we need to be able to choose a file. Okay, and then so if the user chooses a file, we need to find out what did the user choose, right? Then we basically need to be able to read the file, right? So read the file, and there's a special way that we need to do this for our audio. And then we need to be able to play or get the file ready to play. Get the file ready to play. Which means that we're gonna basically take it, put it in a place in memory, I guess, where it can be streamed. Okay, so this is kind of what we need to happen in here. Okay, before we go there, there are some other things that we need to do. Okay, and somebody might ask the question, well, how do I know that I need to do these things? Like, let's say that we're going in here, we don't have an example. How do we know? The best answer I could give is maybe experience. This is something that I hope that as we gain more experience, that these things kind of become inherent to us. So I got a lot of this information from the Juce tutorial. So and these are things that I wonder, well, how would I know that I needed a audio format reader to define which formats I could read, and I think experience is the best answer to those things. So so just hang in there. That's what I'm doing, and I'm still learning. And there's I think the best solution is just practice and just repetition, really. Okay, so don't get discouraged. Okay, I try not to. So the first thing that we need here is we need a class. It's called AudioFormatReader. Okay, what this does is this is going to define what formats that we're actually able to read. And so we click in here. Okay, and so what we have, let me see if I can find it. Oh, it's actually not Audio Format Reader I'm looking for now. It's Audio Format Manager. Okay, so this basically manages what formats we're able to use, that the user is able to select and open. Okay, so what we could do is we have a function down here called register basic formats. If I click in here, says currently this will add WAV and AIFF to a list, and it just registers those formats that we're able to open. So if we use this, then the user will basically be able to open the window and select WAV or AIFF files. Okay, so that's what we're going to use. So we need to first create an audio format manager. I'm just going to call this format manager. And then in my constructor, I can just say format manager, register basic formats. And that will enable us to use WAV and AIFF files. Okay. So now we go back into our open button clicked. Okay, so the first thing that we need to use is choose a file. And how do we do that? Well, luckily Juce has a class called File Chooser. Okay, it does exactly what it says it does. So here we have File Chooser, creates a dialog box to choose a file or directory. And as you can see, we have a constructor here that we need to call, where we need to basically call a couple different arguments here. And we'll go ahead and do that. So we'll create a file chooser object. We'll just call this chooser. And now I'm just going to paste in the arguments that I got from the API documentation there. And now we can just go in here and fill this information in. So we need a dialog title. So what's it going to say? Load a file or choose an audio file. We'll just say choose a WAV or AIFF file. And then here we have the initial directory. Okay, so this is when the user first opens up the box, which directory are they going to be at first? In the tutorial itself, in the Juice tutorial, they had I think something like uninitialized or some method, and that method had been deprecated. So we're going to use a slightly different method here. So we need a file. If we just go into our file documentation here, so I can remember. So if we look in here, we have this enum called special location type. So this defines the default location when the user first opens the window. You know, you can have them where it goes first to the music directory or to the desktop, to the documents. Okay, let's use desktop directory. Why not? So I could just copy this here. Okay. If we look below here, it says assess a set of types of locations that can be passed to get special location. Okay, so get special location is a static method. Okay, so this is how we're going to call it here. So we go file, get special location. I'm just going to auto complete that. And then here we need the special location type. So I can just say file. And I can paste in user home, user desktop directory. So when the user opens up the window, it goes to the desktop as a default. Okay. Next argument here we need a string, file patterns allowed. Okay. So here we can just put a string and we can say .wav files. Okay. The star just means, if you've ever used like bash before, or the command line, you know, if you put a star before something, it just means anything that contains the text .wav, right? And we can actually add another one here if we wanted to. We could say dot or star dot AIFF if we wanted AIFF files. And then use OS native dialog box. That's set to true. I'm just going to keep that as true. This last one, I'm not quite sure what this is. Treat file packages as directories equals false. So I'm just going to leave that as false. Okay, so that's our file chooser. I think that I need to get rid of this to do that. Okay, I think if I want the AFF files, I'm going to try something here, just on the fly. Just my intuition. Okay, let's just see if that works. No, it doesn't. Okay, just for the sake of continuing the tutorial, I'm just going to keep .wav there. Or I could just, what's happening here? So I'm just going to try to build this real quick. I think these last two, oh, sorry about this. I think these last two arguments, if I want to choose multiple file types, I think I could take these off and just do like this. Like that. Okay, let me just try that now. Okay, that seems to be cool. Okay, great. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. So if the user, I hope this doesn't crash. Okay, cool. Thought it was going to crash for a second there. Sorry, just getting some funniness with my computer. I'm just going to let it build completely here. Xcode's being, so just going to let it completely build. Sometimes it crashes if I choose build and then I immediately like stop it. So, okay, cool. I think we're back now. Okay, cool. So if the user chooses a file, so if chooser, okay, so I'm not going to bother going back to the documentation here. The one that we want here is if the user browse for file to open. So if they find it, if they're browsing for a file to open here, then what we could do is we can look to see the result that they pick. Okay, so what we need is we need something that's going to be able to return the type of file that they actually chose, or return the file that they chose. Okay, so if we go to file chooser, and we go down here, we can see that we have a function called getResult. Okay, and that returns an object of type file, returns a file object. So what we could do is we could create a file object. We'll just call this my file. And then what we could say is chooser get result. So my file equals chooser.getResult. Okay. So the file class, just to go into that very briefly. So just represents the local file. Okay, so it's just representing whatever the user chose there. Now we need to read the file. We have a couple special classes that we can use for this. Okay, so we have AudioFormatReader. So AudioFormatReader. And so what we're going to do is, so we basically need something that's going to be able to read that's basically going to be able to read the file that we chose. Okay, so we can just say AudioFormatReader equals, and this actually goes back to the manager, AudioFormatManager, and we have this function here, create reader for. So we're going to create a reader that's able to read the file that we've chosen. Okay. So our audio format manager is called Format Manager, create reader for, and as you can see, this is a pointer. So what we need to do is we need to make this a pointer over here. Okay, so first thing that we're going to do is create reader for. We need to create a reader for my file. Okay, so there we go. Now it's going to give us it's going to complain there because this returns an audio format reader pointer, and that's why we need a pointer here. Okay, now what we need to do, so now we have a reader, and now what we need to do is we need to actually have a audio format reader source. So this actually enables it enables us to be able to play the actual file. So if we go back here, we have audio format reader source. Okay, it says type of audio source that will read from an audio format reader. Okay, and if we go into more, then we have two arguments here. So we need the source reader and then delete reader when this is deleted. Okay, so basically what's going to happen is that if this audio format source gets deleted, then the reader out also gets deleted. Okay, those two kind of belong together. They go hand in hand. Okay, so here we're going to use a unique pointer here. Unique pointer. And I'll explain this why after I've kind of set it up here. So audio format reader source, and then this is going to be called, I'm going to call this temp source. Okay, and then what we need to do is we're going to initialize this in the same step. So, you know, if you followed my other tutorials, then normally you'd have like a unique a pointer that would be in the header file, and then we would do a initialization in our constructor. But here we're doing it all in one step because this unique pointer is just residing in the function open button clicked. Okay, it's not global, it's just residing within this one particular function. Okay, so we can do new audio format source reader source, and then we have some arguments that we need to call here. Okay, so we need the source reader, which we just called, I think we called it reader, and then this is going to be true. Okay, so we have reader and true. Okay, and I think I got that right. So that's all good. Okay, and that's fine. And then what we could do is we can, we'll just do a console out here, and we're going to do reader. What we're going to do is we just want to make sure that it actually loads up a WAV file when we actually load a file. So I'm just looking, is it audio format reader that I'm looking for, or audio format reader source? Just looking. Is it a string? 1 second. Sorry about this. Trying to remember where this is actually at. So let's go back to audio format reader. Just want a way to console this out when we actually load a file here. Is it a string? Yeah, get format name. That's what we want. So it'll just say wave when it loads a wave. So we need the arrow operator here since it's a pointer. So what was it called again? Get format name. Get format name. Okay, so that'll just confirm for us when the file's actually loaded up properly. Okay, so just going to build here. If everything's working properly, we should be able to actually load a WAV file. So if we hit open, it'll bring up our windows there. So it's fine. It brought us to the desktop. Okay, so I'm just going to pull this to the side here so you can see. So it's the desktop directory. So that's where we got that from. Okay, I'm just going to go to downloads actually. And then I'm just going to scroll down, go in here, and then you can see that the only type of files that we could select are waves. And if I had AIFFs in here, we'd be able to select those as well. So once I click this, it should say just wave down here. Okay, so there you go, wave file. So that loads fine. Okay, so before we go, we're just going to go through one more thing. Okay, and this is going to be talking about these unique pointers and the audio format reader source. Okay, so the reason that I called this temp source is because basically, okay, so you picture an audio file. Audio file is just a set of data that is in memory. Okay, and when we bring it into audio format reader source, I don't think it's bringing the whole thing in there, but basically what happens is that you have data that's going into memory. Okay, so let's picture a scenario where we're playing a file, right? So let's say that our audio player is all finished and we're playing our file, everything is fine. Okay, we have this data, this audio file that's in a space in memory, and the application is reading from that memory to be able to stream the audio out to the speakers. And then something happens, right? So let's say we want to pick another audio file to play, right? So basically what we would do is we would go back to chooser, right? And we would hit open to open another audio file. And then there's a problem though, right? We've got one place at the moment where the audio is reading from in memory. Okay, if we open up the window to choose another file, I don't know if this is what would happen, but this is my hunch. What would happen? It would possibly stop the audio. Okay, because it would be saying, okay, you want to load another audio file into memory now. Okay, so when I open up the file chooser, it's just going to stop the audio. Okay, we probably don't want that. So what we need is we've created this unique pointer, this audio format reader source. Okay, what that's going to do is basically it's going to, when we choose a file, it's going to be like a temporary holding place. And then when it's all ready to play, basically it's going to go and it's going to pass on the audio information. It's going to pass on the data to another audio format reader source that's currently playing the file. Okay, so let me show you what I mean. So if I go back to main component, right? So what I'll do is I'll just copy this because we're going to go ahead and create another one really quick. I messed up my thing. So if I go in here and let's say I call this play source, right? Now we're not going to go ahead and initialize it and everything, but what we're going to do is we're going to set up the functionality that passes on temp source to play source. So basically, let's say play source is where our file, where our audio is actually playing from, right? Now, if we go back to into our open button clicked, okay, we don't want a situation where when the user presses open button, that it stops the audio. Okay, so to do this is something that I didn't implement this functionality myself. It's from the Juce tutorial. Okay, but this is my understanding. So basically what happens is that you have temp source, which is another which is another source that holds data. Okay. And then when the user chooses a file, it puts it into temp source. Okay. Then when it's all ready to go, then what'll happen is it'll actually be passed on into play source. Okay. And the way that we could do that is by saying play source dot reset. Okay. And then what I could say is temp source release. Okay. So what this function does is that it actually, when the file, so the user goes in, picks the file, when the user has picked the file, everything is loaded, everything's ready to go, then it passes on the information from temp source to play source. Okay. So it passes it on. And then play source is now holding the data of the audio file that you've just picked. But that just enables things to happen smoothly, so you don't have any sort of hiccups in audio as you're choosing another file when your open window is open. Okay, so I hope I explained that for you well enough. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below or to join the Discord chat group, and feel free to ask. This is something that I'm still learning myself, so we'll learn together and everything. And I hope that that you gain something out of it. And yeah, make sure you drop a like if you gain something out of it. And I will see you next time, where we'll actually implement play and stopping and loading files, and we'll just basically finish the player up. Okay, so hope you had a good one, and I will see you next time.